say we were having this conversation 10 years ago, this very day, and I asked you where you would be in 10 years creatively, what would you have said?
Go on, Tom.
I wouldn't have known you for a start, so things would probably be looking up. No, man. Like, obviously, 10 years. No, you take this question, so let me think. I didn't even get a chance to think about it.
Yeah, 10 years ago. So what? Where am I now? I'm 29 and a half and 3/4. So, like, I'd have been like 20 odd. At that point in my life, I was pretty sure that within the next year or so, I was about to blow up and be massive. So, like, in my head, I think by now, I'd have been just like living in LA in a mansion or something, just like fat and sassy. But I don't know, I was convinced that by the time I was 10 years on from 10 years ago, I'd have been flying. Turns out the music business is well hard, so I'm still grafting.
Were you solo at this point, or were you in a group?
I was out as a solo artist. I was like a grime MC back then, do you know what I mean? And hip hop, but like we came up on grime. But like, so all three of the rappers in Monster Florence, me, Dream, and Wallace, we were like in a clique called The Regime from when we were like young teenagers, and we made music together and recorded at my house and stuff from way back then. So like we were all solo, but we were all in like a crew as such. And and everyone just sort of released their own tunes and jumped on each other's tunes all the time.
Yeah, you were kind of part of a community.
Yeah, like everybody, like there's like I don't know, like 8 or 9 of us that was sort of like in like Essex. There was nobody other than London. Like back in them type days, like mid 2000s to late 2000s, there was just no one about that was doing what we were doing. Everyone else was just like into football and that. And then there's just us, like kids from Colchester, that were all of a sudden doing Westwood sets on One Extra when we were like 18, and everyone was just like, what is going on here? So we were like these like little lone soldiers, like trying to champion something that everybody just was like, I don't get it. 10 years on, now all the kids get it. Everyone's wearing side bags and like London and into culture. So it's bollocks, really. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Good, sweet, cool.
The thing is as well, I suppose if you look at it on the flip side, there's those three guys, and then 10 years ago, so I've known Cam for over that as well. So we were kind of doing the polar opposite music. We were doing sort of more sort of alternative, off the wall kind of music, more band based. So, and then we kind of come across Johnny a few years after that, and then I started working with him for the studio. And Cam has always been either I've been playing in bands with him, or he's been sort of go-to session drummer for the studio. And then from that, we kind of just worked together. And then finally, it's 6 years this year. So we kind of like all came together, sort of the Regime clique and what we were doing sort of came together, and that was when Monster Florence started. So kind of a weird meeting. But yeah, it's kind of worked out well.
You hear what you're saying there, that you were working on band stuff previously. You can hear that in Monster Florence. Like quite often with kind of grime stuff, you'll have the performer is very grounded, and that's kind of what you're connecting with, but the beat can sometimes be a little bit more artificial in a way, whereas you guys kind of don't do that. Everything's kind of grounded.
I think the reason for starting it was never we were never intended for it to be kind of, we never intended it to be kind of popular, but we didn't set out to start something for everyone to like. We sort of set out to do something because I had the studio, had a lot of downtime, and we were just sort of hanging out and just having a laugh. And through that, we kind of, it's just that we were trying to make a fusion of the sort of the live music and the rap thing without, falling into that sort of, the cliches of Linkin Park or those sort of ridiculous territories. Because that's kind of like, you were to explain it and write it down on paper, that's kind of what springs to mind, I suppose. But it's so far removed from anything like that. So that was the plan of it. So there's this hybrid music of not knowing whether it's sort of live or electronic or whatever. It's kind of where we are with the sound, really. It's kind of just a mash of everything, really, that we like. It just happens to be that people like it too, which is great.
Has your understanding, what you were saying there as well, how you wanted you wanted to kind of have that band element to it, and you wanted to try and get the live thing. Has your understanding of the balance of that and the kind of mechanics of that and how that functions successfully, has that changed as the project has progressed?
Yeah. Listen to the first EP. Well, the first EP is like, I think we discuss this on a regular basis. If you listen to it, it's it's kind of 6 people all trying to find their sort of place in this kind of this idea that we've come up with, and you end up with this. Like the first song of the EP is just a kind of like a whirlwind of like every genre. And I think as it's progressed, we've kind of got better at, because we didn't know what our sound was. So obviously now we're kind of much more confident with each other and kind of like, disregarding people's ideas. No one's precious about an idea. If there's someone comes in with something, it's like, no, we don't want to use that. But back in the day, that kind of dynamic wasn't quite cemented. So it was just like anyone jumped in anything we wrote.
Plus, also, you've got to remember, that back in the day when we started,
it's 6 years, man. It's back in the day.
So back when we started, none of us really knew each other that well. If Johnny would come out and start Lisa Simpson in on the sax, and I'd be like, I want to tell him to chill out with that, but I don't know the geezer. So to go, oi mate, nah, it was taken wrong. So it took like a good while for everyone to get comfortable enough to be able to say, right, Cam, you stop tapping. Si, that lyric was shit. You stop doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, as the sound has grown, everybody's relationship has grown, and that means it all kind of amalgamates together a lot easier. It becomes a much easier melting pot to sit in than when you're sat across the room with 3 other geezers who you barely know that you've just straight into a band with. Do you know what I mean?
Everyone's high and paranoid, just going, I don't know whether I should tell them that saxophone shit, or if I don't know, and you kind of, but then to be fair, like, I think we discussed it quite a lot. I think that was great. That kind of uncomfortableness created the first EP, which was kind of a mash of loads of different things. And obviously from there, we kind of fine-tuned it. So to have that touch on all those genres and kind of just like have that uncomfortableness in the studio at times kind of worked well for us because we got over it. I suppose where other bands would fail, I think none of us are sort of afraid to call each other out on certain things. That makes it a healthy working environment, which you don't get with many bands, let alone a band that have kind of mixed up with such different personalities as well, from really different backgrounds.
Who was the first person to call someone out on something maybe not being quite up to standard?
I remember one incident. We were doing a track. It was The Groove. And this was sort of like maybe like the second or sort of third full song that we'd done. Me and Johnny had been working on saxophones and like horn parts for like hours. And Dre rolled in late from the session, sort of rolled up like late afternoon, just walked in and just saw this kind of layout of all these horns and section that we've been working on. We're like, before we'd even said, what do you think about it? He went, nah, this shit, get rid of them. And I looked at it and I thought, well, nah, to be fair, he's got a point. And I deleted them and I emptied the recycle bin and never went back to them. But Johnny's face was a picture because you could see the look of absolute panic. And I'm like, nah, man, like he's got a point. He ain't that good. So, and I think that was definitely a turning point for me. It was just like, there's no point in being precious about anything. If someone doesn't like it, don't like it.
Coming at it, we've kind of spoken about that slight tension to start with from kind of a third person point of view, like you hearing other people's stuff and it not quite fitting out with maybe what you had in mind. From a personal point of view, at the beginning, were you able to be kind of completely vulnerable in that space? Were you able to kind of be completely authentic and true if you weren't quite comfortable with the other people to begin with?
I think everybody was, yeah. I think everybody was. It's just sort of complicated question, really. Like everybody went in there, yeah, with kind of like the same head on their shoulders of like, we don't really know what we're going to make, but we know that whatever it is we make, we want to just make sure that it's real. Let's not go in and go, right, let's make a song like this, or let's make a sound that sounds like this. It was like, let's go in, let's bang stuff, play stuff, and make noise and make vibrations. If they sound good, boom, we run with it. Whether it's a genre that feels removed or whatever, we kind of just, none of us sort of went in with any preconceived idea of how it should sound. It was just about, does it sound good? If the answer is yes, then keep going. If no, then we stop and we move on to something else. Although everybody kind of like, it was pulling in different directions and all of that, it still allowed for the same motions. Whilst everyone's trying to pull in left and right, everyone's still moving forward with each other. So you were never in a position where you were stuck at the back going, I don't want to make any of this and I'm feeling uncomfortable, because everybody was still on that same level playing field. Do you know what I mean? It was never anything other than, let's just try and make some good music. And now it's like, if you listen through to each of the projects, from The Groove all the way through to what's the last thing we released?
Cowboys and Idiots, yeah.
You listen through to that, it's like you can hear each step of the journey of where we were at. And it was like, although we were getting more comfortable, it was less about us having like vulnerability in it to be able to express it to each other. It was more just us not being dumb and just figuring out that we don't need to do all of this stuff that we're trying to do to be original. The more further down the line we got, the more refined things got and the better things got. But at any one point, everybody was always on the same carriage of the same train going in that direction. You know what I mean?
Was that a position you were in when you made 48? Had you kind of established that when you went into that?
No.
48, yeah.
Oh, God.
48 was never meant to be what it was. So 48 originally, Pav from Beggars was like, I've got this idea, want to do an EP or something. It was Pav, innit?
Yeah, it was Pav.
Yeah. And like, we were like, yeah, we're going to make this EP in 48 hours. We'll film it on, live stream it on Facebook. And like, initially it was like, fuck it, let's just do this as a fun musical exercise. We've got the space, we've got people.
It's a good idea. It's a good experiment.
Yeah, that's it. Like when it comes to us, it was like like when you make music all the time, as fun and as creative as it is, the process of that can become monotonous and that becomes uninspiring after a while. So the idea of being like, right, we've got this time pressure of let's get in and like removing all of the yeah buts and no buts and maybe we could tweak this, like none of that, just get in, make it, and when it's done, you can't change it. There's like a freedom within that kind of like, although you're kind of constrained by loads of time and all the rest of it, it's actually a really free way of being creative. But then when we got in and started making it, by pure chance, that just ended up being an album. Like by the end of day one, we only had one tune done.
One song, yeah, one
and
song.
like we sort of finished up for that day at like silly o'clock in the morning and was like, right, we've all got to go home and get a couple of hours kicking and get back in here. I went home thinking, fuck, we're going to look like idiots if we get to the end of 48 hours and we haven't even got an EP. And then somehow that next day, there was just so many people in that space. There was just pockets of people in every part of the studio, even parts of the studio that I'd never seen.
The loft.
Walking up into the loft and there's people just like holding on to people to like stop earth buzz from bass guitars and like just mad shit. And it just kind of like that is like, was the purest form of creation I've ever been a part of. Although it was fucking stressful and I wouldn't rush to do it again, it was just like, it was completely free. There was no thinking. There was no time to think, really, apart from on the first night when it was like, shit, we really need to think of some songs to make other than this one. And then it just kind of like, it gave birth to itself.
Purely by accident, though, really, wasn't it? Because like we said 4 tracks. And then like, it was the end of this, like Simon was saying, the end of the last day, I kind of went around the room and just like, actually just sort of, relaxed off of it a little bit and was like, cool, I think we've got some stuff here. And I went around and started collecting all the stems. And I'm like, shit. I was like, we've got like, I think in the end we actually had like, we had 10 tracks we released, and there was another one as well that was kind of on the ball, but then the 10 that we kept. It was a unique experience because not only did you have like this juxtaposition of personalities where you've got these kind of grime MCs at one end of the spectrum, followed by kind of these orchestral string players, and then everyone in between that. It was really weird to see everyone sort of come together, just like, right, like job, we've got a job to do. Let's just crack on. And it was everyone was buzzing around different rooms, going from one room to the next, and kind of adding bits here. And someone was recording a drum kit while someone's next to them trying to record vocals. And from a production point of view, it's a little rough around the edges, but that was the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to create something within 48 hours. We came out of far more than we expected. And it was all of our mates as well. It was a cool thing to do. It was fun. And then obviously the whole thing was streamed on Facebook, which was even more ridiculous. So there was, at any one point you've got like a couple of thousand people just watching you. It's just odd. While you're having like essentially a nervous breakdown as well.
How does that impact your mindset when you know there's like that many people watching?
There was one moment on, I remember it. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was kind of, things had got really out of control. It was like a barbecue outside and stuff, and people coming in. It was just people just coming from everywhere. People were seeing it on Facebook and then just turning up and then just coming in, laying stuff down. From a sort of, obviously, I suppose, an executive producer's point of view, and it was my studio, I felt kind of I had to at least try and control things to a certain degree. It was fairly uncontrollable. I remember I was left in the control room on my own. I remember looking at my phone, And there's obviously like a 30-second delay on the Facebook live feed as well. So you're looking at your phone, you can see and Facebook had shared it actually. Actually, Facebook themselves had shared it on their sort of official page. And it was insane. There was like 40,000 people watched that one stream over a few hours. But I'm watching it, and I'm kind of looking at the camera, sort of trying to talk back to the people there, saying, "Any questions?" Looking back, nothing. And it was quite unnerving. it was quite a weird experience. Yeah, it was very strange. But again, like Si said, not something I would want to repeat in a hurry. I think we completed live streaming. Everyone's on it now. It's old hat. We'll do something else. Virtual reality, doing space or whatever.
Again, you were ahead of the game.
Well, that's like 2017. It was like a couple of webcams, like 4 webcams, and like some live streaming software that some company lent us for a couple of hours, well, a whole weekend, and then we ended up just doing it. It's like no one was doing it at the time, so it was quite bold. But yeah, like I said, it wasn't smooth sailing at all, and it's not something I would repeat in a hurry. I think we all lost a lot, particularly me and Si, because we obviously, by the end of that first day, when you have nothing apart from one song, we were like, shit, we've got to at least try and like sort this out. And that took its toll on our mental well-being for the course of that day.
The adrenaline kicks in, though, like when you know that you have to do it. Yeah, definitely. What did you learn creatively from that experience with 48 that you feel still carries through to your kind of musical process today?
To be fair, like I say, I think the not being precious thing, which is kind of like what we intended to be like from the start, but like really, it was such a whirlwind, man. I don't even really think I drunk it in properly. I was just happy for it to be finished. But I think the main thing was you come away from it realizing that it's like, because we made tunes there that were done in an hour, and then there's a couple that were done over the whole day in bits and bobs. But just that whole thing of just letting go of shit sometimes and just letting it be what it is and not nitpicking, I think that has sort of transcended through all of the music we've made. And like we felt like that anyway, but I think that probably like solidified that mindset in how we work. And that we never want to do something like that again.
It solidified it publicly.
Yeah.
And I think that was the reason for going into it as well, because obviously it stemmed from that Foreign Beggar session that we had in like the December leading up to the December session we had with him. And we kind of like, so obviously Pav had walked into us with this full band environment where we've kind of got samplers and drum kits, it's all going off, and then we were just kind of knocking out ideas left, right and centre just really quickly, and that's just how we work anyway. Well, yeah, sometimes we work like that, sometimes we don't. It's obviously different workflows for different songs, but I think that was the point of saying that. Like we had the live streaming stuff that we're doing there. He's like, if you can knock out songs this quick, then like maybe we could do this. And we're like, oh yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, like you said, it's definitely solidified that. It's something that we were doing anyway, but we're just a bit better at doing it now. Sometimes. Sometimes.
Is it easier to do that when there's less of you? Like, I mean, how many people were at that 48 thing? Like 30 people or whatever?
People.
40 people.
40, on the last day, it was 40 people.
Man.
40 people. Yeah, there's 40 people. There's people outside. People recording outside in the car on a MacBook. People in the loft, like Si was saying, like having to be held down because there's like an earth problem. There was 2 people in the middle, 2 sets of groups in the middle room, 2 in the control room, 3 or 4 sets of people in the live room. You know,
on a normal one, though, it's all a lot more simple.
6.
Do you know what I mean? There's 6 of us. And to be fair, like that, like fluctuates. Like sometimes, to be fair, recently, since Tom's decided to tidy up the studio for once, we've got more space to all pocket off a bit. Like there's been like, now that you've got like a big live room and then there's a little middle room and then there's the control room. And now that little middle room is like set up to recording. Now there's like little pockets of little 2 people chipping off in there. But generally, it's always all of us in a room, all looking at each other. Actually, to be fair, it's you 3 playing instruments and us 3 sat at the back going, nah, yeah. Nah, twist, go again, twist, go again.
Like a fucking jukebox, mate.
Yeah, like we're just like there, just like whoosh, make music now. But like to be fair, a lot of the time as well, there's pre-done ideas. Like I'll come in with me doing like guitars with my mouth and go, we should make a song that sounds like this, down, down, and like play shit like that. Or like Quentin will have a hook or do you know what I mean? It just kind of like. I think everybody bounces off each other when we're there There's no sort of like two of us go off and start things all the time.
And also as well, it's like, again, in the 6 years, it's changed quite significantly, the workflow. And obviously with lockdown, the last lockdown, things changed where beforehand, like the very start, it was like we'd all do everything in the studio and then there'd be an idea and everyone would go away and write to it. And that's kind of, there's not a huge, it's not a bad thing, but there's not so much writing outside of the studio anymore in terms of like actual lyrics. It's usually done there and then in the studio. And if it doesn't get done there and then, and if the song's staying, that's when they're the ones that take a while to finish because the idea is not there or whatever. But again, like with lockdown, like Dre set himself up in a little studio and was kind of a bit more like coming forward with hooks and stuff like that. And that's changed again. And now we're back to kind of, like you said, working off some of your voice notes, like that song we were working on last night. It just changes. The whole thing's evolving all the time. And it just changes. But yeah, definitely with the lockdown, the quarantine, that changed things a lot.
Do you need a beat to write to?
No. I mean, it always helps. It's always nice to have one. But like, there are plenty of song ideas. I mean, I suppose I can't speak for everyone, but it depends. I know that for myself, sometimes I'll be doing something completely unrelated. I'll be washing up, or I'm in the shower or something, and my brain will hear something. It's like, or I'll have. Actually, do you know what's the most common one? Yeah. I'll be sitting, it happens to me all the time, and I'll watch like films or the telly, and someone will say something, and I'll go, that was a sick sentence. That was a sick sentence. It pisses my missus off all the time because then my attention completely stops being on whatever the fuck we're watching, and I'm sat on my phone like, no, there's a song in that, and I'll sit there and I'll have stuff, and then but normally I won't go to the studio and be like last night I had this idea and I've got this hook idea. I'll just wait, and at some point, someone will do something like sonically that I'll be like, this is sick for that. And then I've just so on my phone, I've just got loads of 4 lines and 6 lines, or just one sentence in bold and then just bullet points about what the rest of that hook could be. And then someone will play something at some point in the studio and then it'll all fit. So you don't need one, but I just think it's a lot easier. Sometimes it's easier to have that first because it sets the tone. Do you know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, if we have a beat going on, these lot are making the music, first question that any one of the us three that write on them will say, we'll look at each other and be like, right, what's this saying to you? Do you know what I mean? So you kind of need that for it to set a bit of context for you to then continue to write. Otherwise, it's easy to kind of go off on a tangent.
Yes, it's like you have the ideas, but it's the beat that drives the actual story itself.
It definitely glues it together. Do you know what I mean? It gives you a pace, it gives you a setting, it gives you context that you can then elaborate on. Otherwise, it's just a bit like, I don't know, you kind of need, you need a beat so that you can find the right pockets. If you haven't got a pocket to find, then it's easy to write something that's just a bit straightforward. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when you've got something and you can actually hear the music, then you can find those weird little pockets that make it interesting, and you become another instrument within that sound as opposed to just rapping on a beat. Do you know what I mean?
I think as well, there's a different, it's different for everyone though, because obviously you're talking like that. But when you've got someone like Quinton, he comes in with, he comes in with more concepts, doesn't he?
Mm.
Like the groove, he came up with a whole story. And then other times he'll come in, like when we were doing Fandino, he's got, I've got this idea, I want to write a song about this, and this. And then you kind of end up trying to write a song around that. And that's much harder, but it's more rewarding at the end of the day when you've kind of managed to actualize this sort of story. And then you've got Dre, who kind of comes from a vibe perspective as well, doesn't he? He's like, I've heard something like this, I like the step of this, and that's kind of the vibe I'd like to go down. And 9 times out of 10, we never end up writing anything like that because we're not very good at doing that sort of stuff. And it was
we always think we're going to. We're good at going, boy, this tune's sick. We should make songs that sound like this. And then our interpretation of that is fucking nothing like the thing that we've listened to. So it tends to sound cool though. And then we end up making a new sound. We do it on purpose. Do you know what I mean? It's all purpose.
And then 3 years later, we'll write a song and go, do you remember when we were trying to write a song like this? We didn't do it. Because there's been a few moments now in the new album, we're kind of like, fuck it, we did it.
Pretty much the entire time we made the album that we're working on at the minute, and nearly every studio session, it was like, right, let's make a Tame Impala song. Come on, let's make a tune like Tame Impala. Like every time Cam played anything on the drums, he was like, what kind of step are you looking for? Tame Impala. Let's make the bass sound like Tame Impala. Not a single fucking tune we've made has ever sounded like Tame Impala, no matter how hard we try. Not a single one.
And that's been going on for 3 years.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. One day soon, I'm going to be gassing when we make that Tame Impala.
We just got to work with Tame Impala.
Yeah, to be fair, it's about
Kevin Parker, if you're listening.
It's interesting what you were saying there, though, about how every kind of vocalist, they come at it from a different point of view and they're coming at it with a different method. Does that give the writing a different weight? And if so, how do you kind of assemble and balance that as a producer?
It's difficult because, like, the role as a producer, my role as a producer in Monster Florence is like, it's two different. There's two different sides because you've got two different types of producer. You've got your traditional producer, like your kind of your Rick Rubins and your kind of Phil Spector type people, where it's kind of organising a session and producing, you know, everything from pulling in people to. But then you've got the more modern way of looking at a producer, where you've got like the hip hop producers, which are people that sit there and make the beats. So my role is amalgamation of those two. It's difficult a lot of the time because that's the thing about not being precious about something, because someone's got an idea and you're like, oh, like, it's a guitar idea, and you pick the guitar up and like bang, bang, bang. You're like, I could do that, but actually, do you know what? Someone else could play this a lot better than me, you know, like, or someone else might play it worse than me, and maybe the song needs that, you know. Like now, we've made Johnny learn to play guitar, which is hilarious. So I've got less to do now. Each time we approach a song, we do it. It's a very different. We don't do the same process. Like, we don't just do a whole batch of songs written exactly the same way. We'll do one song, and then next week we'll be like, "Fuck it, let's do something else." I remember that we were doing this. There's a new song on the record where we wrote. It's a song called "Lag." Wallace came up this. Well, I think it was Wallace. As a concept about living life in The Sims. So we ended up kind of using loads of fucked up digital equipment, like busted iPads and kind of broken acoustic guitars, and kind of try and create this kind of like little laggy, glitchy digital world. But then you've got, I don't know, man, it's not as a hard one to explain, because if you listen to our back catalogue, it's so random, you know, steps through loads of different genres and kind of touches on different things. So yeah, it's hard, but it's fun, far more fun than anything I've ever worked on ever.
Yeah, like what you're saying about you've got so many different styles. When you look at the back catalogue, it's almost like you deploy the different styles of writing depending on what works for the beat in the song itself. Like the bounce changes from song to song, yeah.
Yeah, but it's what we feel like. It's like we get bored easily, very quickly. Like you were saying, that's what I was saying. They'll sit in the back of the room, and if we're doing something that's more kind of beat-driven, there'll be the three of us. It'll be Cam, like, I don't know, in the live room, putting some drums we've got through like a guitar amplifier, and Johnny's busting some keys out, and I'm on the bass or whatever, and we're just knocking out ideas, and then other times we'll all be in the live room playing as a live band, and we'll be sampling it and then taking that and then messing that up, and then other times it will be something that someone's created at home, like one of the songs we were working on last night, and you kind of end up doing it in a more traditional sense, like a beat. If you just kept doing the same thing over and over again, it would be really boring. A deck of cards was a random one, you know. We ended up, yeah, I mean, like the process of that was making something so bad. It was so badly recorded. Piano was out of tune, the bass was out of tune, the drums were recorded with one mic with a broken lead, like all intentional. And the idea was to try and fix it and kind of make this thing sound more, to essentially polish a turd. And you kind of end up, but that's it, man. Like, obviously, listen to it now and you think, that sounds sick, but like how it started was awful. That makes it far more interesting. It's like approaching a song, the songwriting, from a production point of view, approaching it differently each time, you know, because that way you come up with something fresh, or at least fresh to yourself anyway.
Is that sense of boredom you spoke about there, is that also what kind of leads you to the interludes and stuff? And these kind of little vignettes that stitch all in together?
We love concepts. That's the one thing, like I don't know, we love concepts, and we love the skits and all that sort of stuff. So and they're good fun to do. Sometimes we just do them for fun. We've got like a back catalogue of skits that are absolutely hysterical. Absolutely, like gold.
I was going to say, where did because you sample a Babe Station go for one of them, right?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Dre was chatting, like Dream was chatting to one of them, and by pure chance, we were like in that tune at that point. We're like, do you know what'd be sick? We had like a Babe Station girl to say this, and then Dre was like, do you want me to ask one? And we were like, what? And he was like, I'm literally texting one right now. And I was just like, fucking tell her she's got to do this. And then within 10 minutes, she sent us it back. And we were like, gosh, that was a fucking... Sometimes the universe just aligns. And that was one of their moments.
And that particular skit that leads on from the end of Guantanamo, baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is a skit. That's a skit to rule all skits.
That's the I can't even say it. I can't say it out loud because little ears are about, but you can. You can explain that skit if you want.
Yeah, look, basically, I'll skirt around it a little bit because I don't want to incriminate us too much. But there was this one session, right? We kind of went to the sort of sixth dimension, and we kind of had this idea that like maybe traditionally bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones indulged in certain activities and made these amazing records. So we're like, fuck it, we ain't done that before. Let's give it a go. We hadn't done it in a session before, and like looking back on it, probably wasn't the best thing to do. Like Cam turned up at 9 o'clock, and like Cy was hanging off the side, figured out how to play drums. Quentin was hanging off the door. Dre was just sort of lying on the sofa. I was clinging on to reality. One thing we did come out with though was that skit, and that is me and Cy jamming.
And it's perfect. Like that skit, like if you listen to it at the end, like that bit about hanging off the door, that was just what was going. Like I was stood in the room with a chaos pad, slowly crumbling into another dimension, and like I looked around at Quentin, and I was just like, "What are you doing?" And he was literally hanging off the top of this door while it was swinging, and that was it. I was just like, "He's hanging off the door, he's tripping out," and just started singing it. And then next thing you know, it makes the fucking EP.
Bearing in mind this was 2 in the afternoon as well on a Tuesday. So.
Yeah, the whole room had turned gold. That's what I could see anyway.
There was a magic moment of me sitting there playing bass and Cy jumped on the drums, and I look at him, I'm like, Bruv, you're fucking playing drums. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Like the drums just became a thing. All of a sudden I was Keith Moon and it was the bollocks. Now if I get back on it, I can't do it. But like something happened. Some wires in my brain connected that day and something special happened.
Wow. You know what you've got to do.
Yeah, oh yeah, trust. If I could do that without going clinically insane, I'd do it all the
time. Just don't know how the Beatles did it. Just don't know how the Beatles did it whatsoever. Jesus
they must have just not done as much, I think.
Microdosing.
Yeah.
The Miles Kane skit kind of has a slightly Beatlesy vibe to it as well. It's almost got like a kind of Beatles, Rolling Stones type figure being intervied.
Oh, Do you know
what that is? Do you know what that is? Yeah, that weren't even the night, mate. Straight to sleep. That was so when we first started working with Miles and first like chatting to Miles. Me and him were just WhatsApping, just bollocks, just like, oh, have you heard this tune? Have you heard this tune? Just like chit chat, and like. Randomly, he was just messing about and we were talking about, oh yeah, da-da-da-da-da. And then he randomly was like, yeah, started doing this off the cuff. And he was like, yeah, that's what if next year, if there's a DVD about us, this is what would be said. And just sort of done this off the cuff joke voice note to me that at the time I just was like, banter, like loads of laughing emojis and carried on. And then months later, I was like, fucking hell. That could actually be like a really funny skit. And I just scrolled back through my WhatsApp for ages looking for it. And I was like, boom, we found it. I was like, bruv, do you mind if I use one of your bits of banter that you sent me as a skit? And he was just like, no, go ahead, kid. I was like, all right, sweet. So took it. And like, it sounds like it was like this planned thing, but it was literally just a bit of like WhatsApp messing about.
Man, you just clean it up a little bit?
Yeah, just literally, like, because to be fair, iPhones, like the like them little mics on the headphones, pretty crystal clear.
Yeah, because it sounds like he's getting interviewed like in a studio or something,
Yeah,
but he's good at that, man. He's quick at that. He's so off the cuff. He's like, he's banner.
He's so straight into character.
He's absolutely hysterical, that guy. And that's, like you said, that skit was just so perfect. Didn't do anything with it, just shoved it on there, stuck it in the end, sent it to him, and he was in stitches. We're like, cool, that's a keeper. Funny guy, very funny guy.
When you bring someone, such as himself into the room and another creative kind of person, does that change, or does it make you realize things about your dynamic as a group when you bring like a different perspective in?
Yeah. When people come into our space, so we're obviously comfortable in our own environment. So like when I was saying about when the Foreign Beggars turned up, and we've kind of just got this, we're like having a party, like, it's random, like Wednesday afternoon. Like it's broad daylight outside, but in there we've got lights going off, we're jumping around, freestyling, all this stuff's going off. And they kind of come into our space and it's kind of like, whoa. And then they're kind of, I suppose they're kind of, it's not forced into it, but they kind of end up adopting the way that we work. And it's kind of, sometimes, because we've been doing it so long, the way we do it, it always seems like that's just the way everyone does it. Even though, like, for example, when Miles came in, we had this whole, we set everything up, we were kind of just jamming away. And he came in and was like, whoa, Jesus Christ, what's going on? And we were just set the whole band environment up. We just played and played and played. Like, Dre and Wallace were just sort of in the middle of the room with Miles, kind of working on vocal ideas. And it doesn't really seem that alien to us. But then when you sometimes look at people who are in the room, you can sort of see they're kind of a bit like taken back by the sort of, yeah, but it's just because it's intense.
Everybody is. Everybody comes in and is a bit like, whoa. It doesn't help also that you're walking into a session of 6 people. There's a load of big personalities in there. Yeah. There's a shit ton of ego floating about. Like, friendly, competitive ego, but there's plenty of it about. And like, we just, like Tom's saying, we're so comfortable in that, and we're so used to working how we work and how we work with each other. And I think a lot of people, yeah, when they go into sessions with other people, it's a lot more clinical. You've got like your producer who's just sat at the desk and, do you know what I mean, every now and then turns around and does something on the bass or something and then carries on just sitting in the middle. And it's all a lot more, when I see other people's sessions and a lot of other sessions that I've attended like separately, it's fucking stiff, man. Like, ultimately, we're just in there having a laugh, and like, and sometimes some sick music comes out of it, but it's like that completely relaxed, like less, like, so, half the time we get in studio with people and we just spend about 4 fucking hours talking. No one even makes a tune or picks up an instrument or does anything. It's just everyone's just jamming. And I think that's the thing I notice with everybody. They're a bit like, whoa, this isn't like a normal, right, come in, sit down, who's got a chorus? Let's work out the chorus. Let's do that. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, let's get in and vibe and catch a vibe. And if a tune comes out of that vibe, sick. If not, come back next time, we carry on vibing and see what happens again. It's just like, I think that sort of looseness is, to us it seems like normal. That's how I'd like to be able to make music. I don't want to be like constrained and like put into some like structure of how we have to do things. But I think a lot of places are like that, and a lot of other people's experiences in sessions are like that. So I think people come in and they're just a bit like, wow, this is actually fun. And people always want to come back and do more sessions, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing that I've always found, like before I had a studio. I've owned studios for quite a while now. And like every studio I ever attended was exactly that. Like, whether it was, you know, completely irrelevant to the genre that you're playing, it's always that. You're going in, you kind of pay your money, and you're sitting there, or you're not paying money, whatever it is. You know, there is a leader of the session. That person's there. There's like the alpha, and everyone kind of has to bow down to what that person does. And they kind of maybe occasionally look back at you, and you're kind of left to feel uncomfortable. And it's getting towards the end of the day, and you're thinking, do I want to get my part done? Am I going to get this done? And you just kind of wrap it up quickly. And you always ended up feeling, when you come out of it, like you could have done something a little bit better. From my point of view as a producer, I've never, ever wanted to have that in any of my sessions, because that just sucks. And then obviously the five other guys in the band are exactly the same. So we don't do that, you know. So like I was saying, it's like, prime example, yesterday we sat there watching YouTube videos for ages. Just didn't do anything, just chatting shit, just kind of like getting, you know, just listening to tunes and kind of. But that's part of the process. That is part of the process, even if it's just like, you know, you got Cam sitting there saying, "Let's put on a film constantly." Yeah, we never do. But like, that's part of it. Because if something does come out, wicked. If it doesn't come out, it just wasn't meant to happen. But just enjoy it. Chat some shit, like talk about what you've been doing, whatever. Just catch up. It's like hang time. Yeah, like I said, sometimes music comes out of it.
Do you find the ideas coming from that? Like, do you start to have ideas twig as you become more relaxed in that setting?
Definitely. Like, whenever we go in and we're like, right, today, we like we've got like what are we on, like 5 weeks left to hand the album into the label?
4 weeks.
Fucking hell, 4 weeks. We might have to cut this interview here short and go and crack on with some fucking music, mate. Jesus Christ.
Dude, I've got the mix session up here at the moment. I'm mixing.
Good. As soon as this is done, Tom, you get mixing.
I've been mixing.
Fuck, that's threw me off. What was the question?
Yeah, do you get ideas as you're relaxing, as you kind of
yeah. Like, if we go in and we set out like, right, we've got time constraints, we've got to make sure we get this done, or like, we know we've got X amount of time, so we need X amount of tunes done. Every time we go in like that, nothing comes out of it. Very rarely. do we force it? Or maybe you might get like by like 10:30 at night, we end up spending the last 45 minutes of the session and we get the start of something. We go, finally, we've got something sick. But it's always when we go in and just chill and relax and vibe. Like we've done a tune the other day and we spent the first half of the day talking about fucking Meghan Markle and like Nancy Royals and all that kind of stuff. And like all of that stuff that had gone on. And then like later on, when we start to make tunes, we end up making a tune and then all of that sort of stuff starts getting regurgitated into it. And it's like, right, now let's make a funny tune that's going to piss people off talking about all the stuff we were talking about earlier. Like I personally, for my own enjoyment, really enjoy stirring the pot like that. So
You're
like,
the worst. You're the worst.
yeah, I tend to be quite vulgar with shit, but it's, shock factor is always interesting. They remember you. If you piss them off, they remember you. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a different kind of energy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I just think I just think sometimes when we do that, it has to just be that relaxed journey through. Otherwise, it's contrived, man. If you go in and it's not chilled out and you're just bouncing around ideas and talking.
That song was called Relax. Come on.
That tune's called Relax. And
Come on.
ironically, it's probably the most least relaxed song on the album.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible.
If you have someone enter that environment though that is kind of in that clinical, uptight straitjacket frame of mind that other people in writing sessions tend to be, is it a delicate balance? Can they upset the atmosphere in the room and kind of kill the vibe?
I think it kills theirs. I don't think it kills ours.
No,
people are just like, oh shit.
we've had like some, like, we're going to name any names because that's just like
go on.
Kiss and tell.
Go on.
I'm not saying.
Who?
You know.
No, go on.
But like, coming into a session, it's like, it's usually you find it's the kind of the people that are more established, not like Miles or people like that. But like some people that come in and they've kind of got a particular way of working and they're so ingrained and they've got this level of success where they know what works and what doesn't work and has worked for them. So when they come into this alien environment, they're like, oh, right, God. Oh. And obviously that doesn't work for us whatsoever.
Well, whenever that's happened, it's never like, it never fucks with our flow.
No,
like
it doesn't.
we end up carrying on around that person, and then that person will kind of like wander around the studio, just like, okay, what should I do? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit like roll with us or get rolled over vibes. Do you know what I mean?
Like bullies, really. We're just like bullies.
Like really like nice, happy, gentle musical bullies. You come to our studio, you've got to play with our ball, or you've got to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. In the nicest possible way, though.
Yeah, but it's never like, no one ever picks up on it and that. It's just people, there's been sessions when people have left and we've just gone, yeah, let's probably not do that one again. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, you catch a vibe of, people just work differently, man, especially creative people, and some creative people are stuck in their ways. And like, that's cool, man. If that works for you, sweet. But it's all just a bit too structured for us. But it doesn't.
Boring.
Yeah, it just gets boring, yeah, literally.
Can you tell from the off? Do you know pretty much straight away?
I think you pick up a vibe, but I don't know. But then the thing is it depends on who you've got in, because like it's a daunting thing to go into anyone else's studio that they're comfortable in, with, especially with six of us. Do you know what I mean? I'm a gobshite, Dre's a gobshite. Like most of us are gobshites in the band. Like it's probably if you don't know us to walk in, it's probably a bit like, whoa. So you kind of have to give people the benefit of the doubt when you start sessions. It's going to take a little while to, do you know what I mean, warm up a bit and for people to feel confident to come out of their comfort zone. But then for some people, it just pushes, because it's so out of their comfort zone, it just pushes them further and further and further into themselves. And it just like fucks with them creatively. And you can kind of judge that from a distance, and you just have to kind of gingerly. There's been a few times where we work with people and I know that they're not really knowing what to do, so you find yourself being like, yo, let's do this, and just engaging with them on what you're doing in the hope that they'll then go off and start tailing off from that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you kind of separate in the middle of the process.
Yeah, because you don't want to be a dickhead, innit, and just be like, "What, you don't get this tune now?" All right,
scared.
Do you know what I mean? You can't be a dick. You have to try and work to people's strengths and understand their weaknesses. But then ultimately, there does, for some people, you just hit a wall, and it's just like, this probably creatively doesn't mix well. You know what I mean?
We haven't had that many. We haven't had that many of those sessions.
No,
Generally speaking, generally speaking, they've all been
pretty good.
They've all had. They've all been good, and even the ones that haven't necessarily worked, we've learned from it, and we've not left. There's not been any bad relationship or anything been left from these sessions where it's like, we're never talking to that person ever again. It's all been.
We ain't met no twats. There's been people that we've worked with that have been easier and more relaxed and more natural, but everybody that we've always had, we've never left and been like, oh, that guy's a dickhead or that girl's an idiot. Do you know what I mean? It's always like good vibes. Just sometimes the connective juices just don't quite blend.
And that's the other thing as well. Like even with our sessions, there's never any arguments. That's the one thing out of any band I've ever played in. I don't think we've ever had there's never been any sort of form of confrontation. Obviously, voices get raised and opinions get put across.
Oh yeah, a lot of fuck-offs happen.
Oh yeah, but we just do that for love.
Yeah, there's no
fuck off, mate. Hey. But we've never had anyone just completely throw the toys at their pram. We've never had. Oh, actually, I have a few times. That's not true, but never in not in an aggressive way. And definitely, that's something I've never had in any band or project that I've ever worked on. And I see it, obviously with the other acts I work with as well, I see it loads. I see all that tension, but there's not any of that. And it's kind of, I think from the outside, you'd probably expect it because we are quite loud and quite brash, but maybe that's why we don't. It's no point.
Do you think that that's maybe part of it? Because the fact that no one's holding anything back and you're all being so open with your emotions in quite a, like you say, bold and brash way.
Yeah, bro, that is literally even outside of music, just people in general. That is the formula to not clashing with people, is by being honest with people. And like you say, because we don't hold anything back, there's nothing to hide. Half the time, when you have angst towards each other or there's things that are pissing you off, it's because one of you is thinking something that you haven't said to the other one, but you've probably said to one of the other band members, and you're both sitting there thinking he thinks that this is shit, but he thinks this is good, and he doesn't know. And then you go out the room and they're like, oh, he thinks that's shit, by the way. And then you're the dickhead. You know what I mean? Whereas if from the off, we straight away are just like, nah, dead, and again, go again. Tom, stop it. I had a tune, we was working on a tune in the middle room the other day. Johnny had I'd made this track that was just a really basic idea that I'd literally made the beat out of splice samples because I'm not a producer, so I just stuck sounds together and was like, all right, Johnny, go away, and just sort of recreate this but make it ours, so it sounds like that but not that, and do that. And he's like, cool. I spent hours in the other room working on something else. I've come in, bless him, he's been sat there for time making this tune and got this real fancy bass line. I sat down and he's just like, you like it? And I'm just like, yeah, but not that bass. And he's just like, oh, why? And I'm like, it's good, but it's too happy. It's making me feel, I don't want it to feel like that. No, man. And he's just like, cool. And there's no time for sitting there and being like, and I know it's long. I know he's sat there for an hour and a half figuring out what he wants to do and how it's got to be done. But there's just no time for taking it personally. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I've got no problem with being told, "Si, that take was shit," or "Si, you could do that better." Or Quentin, I'll come to Quentin and I'll be like, "Bruv, listen to this chorus and I think this is fucking sick." Show it to him and he's like, yeah, that's sick, but I reckon there's a cooler word you could use for that and there's a better way that you could say that, and it works vice versa. It has to be like that or it's just fucking long. Otherwise everyone's, no offense, everyone's acting like girls and just falling out of each other. Do you know what I mean? That's just long, man.
I wanted to come back to something lyrically that we spoke about slightly earlier on in the chat, where you were speaking about how you'll often take phrases kind of from television or whatever. When you're watching something, you'll enjoy the wordplay of it and note it down. Is the feeling you get when you hear it on the television the same feeling you get when you hear a piece of music in the studio that makes you want to use it in that song?
Yeah, probably. It's probably not quite the same, but it's very similar. It just sometimes you can hear something and it just evokes an emotion, and it might not necessarily be the emotion that it's intending to. But it there's loads of things that I write down that what I end up writing off the back of it has got fuck all to do with what the actual thing that I saw it was from. But it just it makes me feel a way. But in the same way that I can sit in the studio and hear a song and Quentin's interpretation of that compared to mine are two completely different things, but it still sets us both off on this little tangent of, I'm inspired by this. Do you know what I mean? I do think it's the similar sort of thing. It kind of it kind of like they're kind of different, but they both lead to the same end goal. Do you know what I mean?
Like parallel train tracks, kind of.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I think as well, like from a musical point of view, though, like I think that's the one thing that kind of we're all into is the kind of the visual aspect of it as well. Although we've made a few videos of our own, which are cool, but obviously from a visual point of view, we kind of write music and just write songs with the idea of the kind of like visualizing the actual kind of how it would be in a cinematic form. Like a lot of the songs that we've got off of Foul, like because obviously at the time we didn't have the budget to do the videos for it, we had some mad concepts. And like obviously now that we're kind of with a label and kind of had the finances to do that, we're kind of getting a bit more bolder and kind of writing songs that with the end, whether we make the videos or not, but you've kind of thought that far ahead. Like Quinton's a sucker for that. Yeah, Quinton's already thought, like before he's even written the first line, he's already got the video, the whole cast, the crew. Like,
bruv, that's how a lot of his tunes start. I'll come in the studio and he's like, bruv, I've had this video idea. Imagine this video, yeah, and we've got a dinosaur in a cape and it flies into a giant mountain with and just explains all this shit. And he's like, yeah, so basically, yeah, and then the song will be about depression. So what do you think? And I'm just like, how the fuck have you just got there from that? But like, he sees the whole journey, and then it makes it difficult to create because he gets pissed off if it's not at the end bit of that journey. We've got to work all the way from the back, and Quinton's there just like, no, I need dragons, and we are working with lizards here. Come on. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, was that the case for the handstand video? Because that kind of lines up completely, like metaphorically.
That video. Well, the thing about the handstand video. So obviously, when we wrote handstand, that was right. I've been thinking that was like before. Just after we'd finished Foul, we'd kind of started working on the next batch of tracks, which was part of an EP. We'd written it a day, and then kind of Dre came in late as parts the following day, and then that was it. It was done. We kind of forgot. We didn't necessarily forget about it, but at the time we didn't really have anything for it to be used on. But then Scribbler, who does all our artwork for pretty much everything that we've done, the really good artwork, he had this concept for a video and kind of where he wanted it, as it turned out, the whole thing being flipped round and flipped on its head. And again, he pitched the idea to us, and we never had the money for it. And then eventually we released the EP, and we kind of did the 26 Ghost video and all the stuff we did at Abbey Road as well. And then we kind of exhausted everything. And then Scribbler just kept pitching the idea for us. So we went back to the label and just basically just said, can we have some more money for a bit?
Please, can we do this?
Please, we just sat there. He's like, obviously Andrew, bless him, actually just went, right, see what I can do. Comes back, is like, yeah, cool, let's go. And we put that, like, that video is a mad video. It's a mad video. Shot the whole thing in a day as well. That was done in a day, and it was just fucking superb. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We've got people like it's not just us. Obviously, there's the 6 of us, but then we've got other musicians that we work with on a regular basis. We've got Will, we've got Robin. The people that were playing with us that had the Abbey Road sessions that we've got James Kelly, who does our photography, has done Monster Florence and everything before that with the Psy and Regime and all that lot. And then you've got Scribbler, who's done all our artwork. So we had this team of people, obviously, and the label. But all these people are kind of involved. So Monster Florence is kind of a gang.
Collective.
So it's a collective, yeah. It's a collective. So it's the thing. Like we all work on. We've got Monster Florence, but at the moment I'm working on Dre's album, and Psy's got a record on the go with Will. It's got some stuff on the go. Me and Johnny and Cam are always doing sessions for other people. And it's a whole. Colchester's a small town, but people look to this area because we've got a pretty cool scene of people. Man, it's good. A good collective of people.
At what point do you distinguish an idea then for Monster Florence and not for a side project?
To be fair, all the solo projects, it's all done at separate times though. We have one day a week that is set every day. Every Tuesday we're in studio. All of us are in the studio every single Tuesday, and that day is solely for that. My solo shit that I work on with Will, I fit that into sessions separately at Will's, and Dre does his here, and Quinton does it. Everyone's dotted about. If anything, I'd feel like I was taking the piss to turn up on a Tuesday and go, yeah, this is all sick, but do you mind if we all work on one of my tunes? Or do you know what I mean? We ain't got that much time to work on Monster Florence realistically. Between everyone's normal life that they've got to upkeep and everything else, to then muddy up any time that we like preciously do have for Monster Florence with anything other than Monster Florence is just not worth it. Sometimes it goes the other way around. Like there's fucking loads of stuff that I've started for myself. I started making a solo project probably about the same time that we started Monster Florence, but there has been so many times that I've started and gone, do you know what? Yeah, what is the point in me taking this tune for myself when this would be better if we do it with the band? Do you know what I mean? So 9 times out of 10, it's the other way around. You end up taking shit from your solo sessions and then taking it to Monster
That's
Florence.
how we met. That was how I met you, from doing your first mixtape. So that's how we met. We were doing that. And it was like we were working on. We obviously sort of like this pre-recorded the vocals for it, and then kind of sat there and were like, let's do some more stuff. And by that point, everyone had sort of come in. We'd had Dre and Quentin were there. Sorry, Wallace. Then Sam had come in, and David had been hanging around. It's like, fuck it, this is cool. Let's just start this thing and do a band. It's kind of come from that.
Do you notice any difference in the ideas that you develop outside the Monster Florence space and then bring in? Like what you're saying with the stuff that might start off as solo and then be brought into the group because it would work better there.
It depends for everyone, I suppose. Like me personally, I always try to go, if I'm working on something solo, I don't want it to sound like the band. Do you know what I mean? Because what's the point? I might as well just use it. But that half the time is the reason why I then end up going, right, fuck it, let's just use this as the band, because I can go off on a tangent of my own, but ultimately, because my energy and my focus is in the band, I kind of end up coming full circle back to myself. Like some of the tunes on my new solo thing are like far more just like beats and rapping, because within the band we have that platform to be really exploring our musicality and exploring like lyricism in a far more poetic and intricate way than sometimes you just want to stick on a beat and say some sick shit. Do you know what I mean? Which we do, but like I think Monster Florence is a lot more than that. Do you know what I mean? It's sick that you've got 3 rappers, everyone can rap and do that, and we can just put on a fucking 808 beat and go in. But ultimately, the whole point of Monster Florence is to be far more experimental and far more intricate than that.
It's the process of getting to that point, isn't it? Like for example, like we were saying about Resourceful. Resourceful came from like a beat I freaking made in like my drum machine, like in sort of 10 minutes. Threw it to the group, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is sick." I'm like, "Is it? It's dead." And Quentin comes up with this concept, and then we kind of bandified the whole thing and took it so far removed from what it was, and then drew the whole thing back to just a straight beat where it was. But it took us 12 months to come to that conclusion. That's the process, man. But then again, other times it's just bang, do a song, it's done, that's finished. You know, but it's in that process, you know, like so I can't imagine So would be sitting there with Will and just be doing, you know, banging out like a drill beat or something and go, you know what? It needs an orchestra. Let's put in an orchestra in Will's bedroom. You know.
Yeah.
and then putting in the orchestra and going, nah, let's just get rid of all of that. You just wouldn't. It's not. And the thing is as well, like for everything else I work on outside of it, and I can probably speak to Cam and Johnny as well. I don't know, like it doesn't quite feel, doesn't have the same satisfaction. The result, I don't ever feel as.
You miss us. You miss us.
I mean, when you speak about, we were talking about handstand like a few minutes back, and when it comes to pushing yourself in different directions, the type of stuff you're doing, like vocally and kind of sonically on that, is taking it somewhere you've not really been too much before, a lot softer direction.
Yeah, but then we had like Deck of Cards was kind of written around a similar period of time as well. The thing is, there's one thing the studio's got that no other studio in the world will have, right? Is this fucked piano that I picked up for free. There's one piano that's just horrendously out of tune, but is absolute magic. And anything that starts with that kind of ends up feeling really mournful and kind of retrospective and kind of a little bit more emotional. And that's kind of a lot of those songs.
And I think it was also timely as to where we were at. Like when we wrote that, everybody individually, like that song's fucking that song is near enough therapy for each person on that track. Like that song that song's so personal that it took me a while to decide I was happy with that being a song that we put out. I remember saying to Quentin, because everyone was like, "Oh, handstand, man, this tune's sick," and I was like, I remember ringing up Quentin and being like, "Bruv, I don't know if I want this tune to go out. Like, I'm saying some shit that's gone on, and this is far more of an outlet track as opposed to saying I want people to hear." And then he was like, nah, man, we've got to do it. We've got to put it out. And so I was just like, all right. And even up until the point of doing the video, I remember doing the video thinking, I really don't want to reenact this shit moment in my life. Like, but it kind of like, that honesty, like that's what's connected with people the most. People can like you can hear that it's real. It's not like some bullshit stories that are being made up. But in the process of that, it shows that it's not even, let's see, like that tune, to me, it's not even like it shows like a softer side to everyone, but I think it really shows a vulnerable side to everyone. And when you're a band who are kind of based around a lot of heavier, thumping, bass heavy, you got me being vulgar and swearing loads and whatever, then when you then show that real human side of everybody, it kind of made everybody, I think it took everybody back a little bit. It's made everyone like, oh, right, okay, like it's not just jumping around and saying fuck, do you know what I mean?
One of the best, because we've only played it, like obviously the EP came out in May, the only time we've ever played it is Abbey Road, but that was, the Abbey Road version, that was probably like one of, obviously aside the video is fucking sick and amazing, but that performance we did at Abbey Road, the take that we did was the first full time we played through it, that's the first take we did, and that is just, I just wish we released that version. It's fucking crazy. It really is. It's like, that's probably one of the pinnacle moments for me musically. And there's actually a point in that live video where I start singing the bits that you don't really hear on the studio recording of it, with the kind of the big whoa bit at the end. And there is a moment of where like the camera pans across to me and my jaws dropped. Like,
mate, when you get to the end of that video, I clocked it after we released it. I didn't even clock, like, when I get to that, like, that big crescendo bit, I go, whoa, like, and then when it all stops, if you watch, like, literally, I'm stood there and I look like someone else has just done that, and I'm impressed. I'm looking around at everyone going, fucking yes, mate. I don't know what just happened there, but that was fucking
sick. The thing about that is, again, we hadn't played it. That was the first we played it live. So Johnny obviously composed these strings that weren't on the record. We pulled in all our mates to kind of pulled in all his favours. Everyone's there. We're in Abbey Road. Studio 2, it's all kind of like, you know, trying to get our money's worth out of it because it weren't cheap. The label and kind of the production team were a bit like, you should only really focus on doing like, 2, maybe 3 songs. And we're like, fuck it, we're brilliant. Let's do. We ended up doing 8, didn't we? We ended up doing 8. We ended up everyone, the camera crew leaving because we had nothing left to record, and then ended up staying on for over 3 hours recording a bunch of other stuff. But that moment of obviously where the first thing that we did, and the strings came in, and it was the first time we'd all heard it, and it was just like, fucking hell, this is crazy. And you see at the end, everyone's a little bit shell-shocked, like, what the hell happened there? But yeah, amazing. Really,
mad. I don't want to do too much performing of it, though, because singing that chorus live is fucking hard work. Like, that little fucking high-pitched singing shit. See, when we recorded the song, I was like, I want to record this, but I'm going to crash, we're going to do that, but like, let's make it sound like a sample. So I'll sing it, and then we'll put it in, and we'll fuck it up a bit, and then we'll loop it so it sounds like a sample, which all was great until it come to like, fuck, now we've got to play it, and we can't just play a sample over and over. And I was like, fucking no. And like, when we do live gigs and shit, I get to like song 3 and my voice is gone because I'm gobbing off and shouting and that. So I'm not looking forward to being like midway through the set, right, let's bring it down a notch. And I'm there trying to...
That's the other thing, isn't it? That's the other thing that we kind of miss as the live thing, is that I think, obviously, during lockdown, our kind of like audience has kind of widened massively since lockdown, because everyone's trapped inside or whatever's happened. We kind of like, things have started to pop a bit more for us. So there's a whole load of people that haven't seen us play live, and that's another level. I've even forgot what it's like. But our live sets are a bit mental. I'm quite looking forward to getting back on there.